Welcome to 2023. And welcome to another year of great conversations where we marry education and technology. Welcome to another year of EdTech Monday. Now, if you're wondering what EdTech Monday is a platform for EdTech entrepreneurs, education stakeholders, and government representatives to facilitate critical conversations on the use of technology for teaching and learning. The show is an initiative of the MasterCard Foundation's Regional Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning in ICT, and it's part of the foundation's strategy to find solutions to Africa's youth employment by closing the gap in access to quality education and advancing the integration of technology in education policies and practices across Africa. EdTech Monday builds on the foundation's Young Africa Work strategy in Ghana with the vision of harnessing opportunities to shape the future of work and to create an inclusive economy with enhanced resilience for young people, especially women, by 2030. The MasterCard Foundation has partnered with Mest Africa to bring you EdTech Monday, which airs on the last Monday of every month, and you can catch the show live on 9 a.m. on the City Breakfast Show or watch it live on Facebook via City FM or City 97.3 FM or Mest Africa. My name is Nathan Quao and I'll be moderating this session. Today we are talking mainstreaming hybrid models of learning. Now, we do know that in Sub-Saharan Africa, the area contains or has the world's biggest, fastest growing population of school-age youth, with only 8% attending university. Now, if you go by this number, around 20% of children in Sub-Saharan Africa could be excluded from schooling by 2030, indicating a likely decline in the quality of education. We know what COVID did. COVID had a massive impact on education and training across Africa. You had about 250 million learners at various levels getting affected. And then we had to try and do e-learning and all of that, which is great, but there's a challenge of data and all the related matters. And so today we are discussing the mainstreaming of hybrid models of learning in Ghana, and my panel will be sharing their thoughts on the medium to long-term actions that Ghana needs to adopt to effectively use technology to build resilient education systems, digital skills, and to leverage edtech ecosystems to build capacity and implement adaptable policies. I've got three people who know their stuff really, really, really well. First up, I have Abba Brandful Ankrah, who's head of preschool at the Vine Christian School. Now, Abba is presently the head of preschool at Vine, and Vine is an international curriculum school with a multicultural environment with a focus on training and raising Afrocentric world leaders for the coming generation. She holds an MA in Educational Innovation in Teaching and Learning from the University of South Wales in the UK, a postgraduate diploma in Education from the University of Cape Coast, and a BA in Geography and Resource Development from the University of Ghana. Abba, thank you so much for joining us. Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you, Nathan.
Great. My second panelist is FJ Cava. He is the Chief Operations Officer, TECHAiDE. Now, like I said, he works for TECHAiDE. Now, TECHAiDE uses ICT to improve education, to support youth development, and to facilitate health delivery. And FJ Cava is a leading expert in the field of educational technology with a deep understanding of how technology can be harnessed to transform the way we teach and learn. FJ, good morning. Welcome to EdTech Monday.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you for having me.
Great. And my final guest is Hilda Barasa. Hilda is Africa Policy Lead at the Tony Blair Institute of Global Change. And she is a public policy specialist with extensive experience working with governments, public sector agencies, and the private sector to deliver legislative and policy reforms. With interest in digital ID and digital government transformation, Hilda's work focuses on how governments can leverage technological advances to increase efficiencies and enhance public service delivery. Hilda, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to EdTech Monday.
Thanks, Nathan. Glad to be here.
Great. Let's begin. Now, I read some stats concerning school-age youth in Africa. Can you guys just tell me what the data says about Ghana, how many in-class pupils we have at the various levels, and whether or not the hybrid model will be a viable solution to ensure inclusivity for all school-going age groups in Ghana? Maybe Abba, maybe you can start us off.
All right. So the hybrid model, yes, it is a viable solution. We realized this particularly during the COVID-19 lockdown era, when the COVID-19 had an impact on the education system. At the time, there was no access to physical learning. So hybrid model was an easy access.
Okay.
Children had access to learning because of the hybrid model. So yes, this is what I'll say about the hybrid model. I think it's a viable option. Once we are able to access it, it's a viable option for children.
Okay. FJ?
Yeah, I think the hybrid model is not only important during times such as I said, during COVID, but I think technology is being integrated into everything that we do. And that if it's not fully integrated into education, the kids are losing out. And we need to start doing hybrids so that, we even today, you said we're on Facebook, right? We're sitting here, we're using hybrid model
doing
even on the
hybrids,
radio. And so the children should also learn how to use it.
Wonderful. Hilda?
Yeah, really have to agree with what the other panelists said. I think particularly when you look at the statistics in Ghana,
Yes.
when you think about educational attainment and the fact that you have, at the primary level, you have about 71% of the students actually completing like primary education. But as it progressed to junior high and to senior high, the statistics actually become quite shocking. So you have,
The numbers begin to drop.
They begin to drop quite significantly, and this has an impact on obviously like attainment levels, education attainment levels for students. So when you think of foundational numeracy, foundational literacy skills, a hybrid model can actually allow the country to significantly bridge that gap and enable particularly even students who are out of the formal education network to still gain this really critical foundational skills.
Okay, wonderful. Let's get into some more specifics. Just share your experience with hybrid learning. You work in a school. You work with children and all. Let's talk about how it plays out or how it looks like at the preschool and primary levels, and what you feel is your best case scenario in mainstreaming hybrid models of learning. And then maybe you can talk a bit about the tertiary level if you want to.
Okay. So, sorry. So personally, I've experienced hybrid learning at all levels. I'll start by talking about my MA degree in education. Not quite hybrid because it was fully online, but it was an opportunity. It was available.
Okay.
We took it. We did it. Okay, so that's a tertiary level. When I talk about at the work level, so for the primary and JHS or high school students, we ran a hybrid learning module during the COVID-19 period. We did a super job.
I see.
We brought the learning to the children at home, so we had a timetable where they had specific subjects every day. So they were online with their teachers and their classmates learning. It was something that we did every day, it was daily, so that we're able to keep them at the level that we wanted them to be, so that when we finally went back to school, physical school, there won't be a gap.
Okay.
The transition was easier because we had engaged them during the period.
Okay.
Now, at the preschool level, we had online learning for them as well. Yeah, we did. Obviously, we couldn't do daily as we did with primary and JHS, but we had live sessions with them twice a week. Okay. Now, prior to these live sessions, we sent materials to parents.
I see.
Okay, so worksheets, videos, pre-recorded videos by the teachers and videos that were available online. So we sent these based on the topics that they were supposed to cover. Okay, so we send these to parents. Parents go through it with the children. Then we meet them online twice a week. Now, meeting them online twice a week was super because then they got to interact with their classmates, got to interact with their teachers. So they don't forget when we come back to school that we are actually back in school. So when we came back to school, the transition was easy, because we had kept them learning. They were doing their assignments and submitting online. And I mean, personally, my children had a good time with online learning. I found that they even learned better. You know, they learn better when they were engaged that way. And I think it really helped. One thing that we did as a school too was we opened it up. So we had children from other schools who joined just for the online learning,
okay.
you know, because we figured you need to help during these times as well. So it was a really good program that we ran, and it really helped. Yes.
Wonderful. I mean, let me get to Hilda and FJ, and maybe you can talk to me about the global frameworks guiding hybrid learning models. Are there any, and how feasible is it to mainstream these hybrid models in Ghana? You know, talk about learning and all. How can we do that?
Yeah, so I think it bears mentioning that globally governments are faced with sort of like a trilemma when it comes to
A trilemma,
Yeah.
three-sided problem.
a three-sided problem. So governments are trying to figure out how do we deliver quality education at the right scale, so you know you're not leaving any child behind,
Okay.
and at a cost level that is not a burden to the exchequer. So that's the education trilemma for it.
Okay.
At
Quality, scale, and cost.
quality, scale, and cost. So at the Tony Blair Institute, we've come up with our own minimal viable education framework to address this trilemma. So essentially, we're looking at a system that addresses the administration of a school at a local and regional level, looks at the experience of learners and teachers, also looks at the technical infrastructure for the school itself, and then also looks at the parent and care engagement, because this kind of learning happens within an existing ecosystem. So the framework that we came up with has 3 tiers that basically just recognizes that what would be a minimal viable system for a high income country would differ quite drastically from what would be minimally correct for a low income country. And this would also apply to Ghana when you think of like the disparities in regions between school systems in the north versus the south, for example, or in the central region and the west. So Ghana would fit sort of like at the tier 1 level of that minimal viable framework. So here we're talking about integrating technology, and it's not just about like taking technology and giving it to students and saying run with it, but it's how do you build the supporting infrastructure that can actually support learners to be able to adapt to that particular system. So we're still talking about what would be more of a high level of centralization, grouping schools, working at a local and regional level to ensure that delivery is done well, creating like a support system for the teachers who are delivering the hybrid learning model to students. So particularly where you have teachers who are low skilled. So if you think of like when you're building a building, you have like a lot of scaffolding on the side. So creating that level of support for teachers. And then also focusing on the fundamentals for we're trying to get the basics right. How do we get the fundamentals for reading, for math, for science, right, at that particular level? And obviously at this particular level, connectivity is important. So you have to get that right as well at that level. So it's you're thinking about it as a marathon and not a sprint. So there's a lot of investments that would be required at this particular level. But as you cascade and move to tier 2, where it becomes about building on that basic foundation, and then sustainability when it comes to tier 3, you've laid the right kind of foundation for the system to thrive.
FJ?
Yeah, so I love Hilda's response. Thank you. That's great. So I work for a company called TECHAiDE, and we deliver technology solutions to empower. And it's really about empowerment. And to address some of what Hilda was saying is that the technology company I work for is we don't have a global, we had a very local approach. And using the problems of Ghana, we designed a new product called Asanka. And Asanka is a little bit of the hybrid that we were talking about, trying to reach people where they had no technology. And it also develops with what Hilda was saying about the scaffolding and the teachers. We have something called the TECHAiDE Certified TECHAiDE Training Network, the TCTN, TECHAiDE Certified Training Network. That is the teachers to help build that infrastructure and make sure that they're certified and trained in all of these technologies. And I also loved what you said about inviting the other schools in and getting more of the kids involved when they didn't have access. which I thought was really, really great. I also noticed that there are just, there's a couple other barriers that we found, which was a lack of digital literacy and a lack of support for the educators. Not only local support, but national support. From the governmental level. That there's a lot of lip service being said to it, but not a lot of action around it. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Let's move the conversation on now. Now, this question is for the three of you. Let's talk about the major challenges that are likely to hinder a successful implementation of hybrid education, and what you feel education policies need to look like, or in terms of changing and adapting in order to facilitate a hybrid model of learning. I don't know who wants to
Okay, I can start.
Yeah.
All right. So I think one of the major challenges is access to data, internet, access to devices that will actually help the children.
So you mean that internet access?
Yes, internet access.
Okay. And then the devices.
Yes, and then the devices.
Okay.
And also the cost of internet. The cost of the internet here.
So those are the major challenges, or you feel like
yes, I feel like there are others, but these are, for me, these are the major ones. There's also the problem of supervision during the hybrid learning, depending on the level of the child. There should be supervision from home. Yeah. Then there's exposure to excessive screen time. The excessive screen time comes with its own challenges. So if it's not streamlined, it becomes a challenge. Then there's also the problem of inclusivity, especially with learners that may have special education needs.
Okay.
As to whether they are being included in hybrid learning. So for me, these are the areas that if there's some policy should be built around these areas, how to make these things better. And then it will work.
Not to speak against my panelists, but internet is important, but I don't think it's necessary. The Asanka device that I was talking about doesn't need internet to actually function. And so I think that's part of a solution set. It's more of a combination of things as opposed to one or the other. I also think, though, there does need to be like a curriculum alignment and quality assurance. Right now, the GES has a curriculum. They just redid the JHS curriculum. They're redoing the SHS curriculum. And having a mindset of a hybrid approach would be better. We do these Yamaranta labs out in the middle of really remote areas, and we blend using our makerspace. We blend the GES curriculum with the makerspace curriculum. So essentially, we're teaching the teachers how to use the 3D printer to teach chemistry, right, by making molecules and things like that, how to blend the curriculum using the technology to reach the educational outcomes they want to. And I think the last thing is what we've all been saying, equip the teachers with these digital skills. It's not just give them a laptop and say, okay, run with it. It's how do you use the laptop to actually train the kids so that the kids can improve their BEC scores, that the kids can improve the WASI passing rate.
Great. Hilda, maybe you can talk to us from the policy point of view. What needs to change if we are to facilitate this hybrid model of learning here in Ghana, maybe in a place just like Ghana?
Yeah. I think not to keep harping on the point. Connectivity is an issue, and it should be recognized, because you have 81% of learners who don't actually have access to the internet. And I really liked what the government did during the COVID period, that, they recognized the limitations in connectivity. So they contextualized how they were delivering hybrid learning using radio, using radio, using TV, where it was available. So it's important
to
also
learning channel.
Exactly. And I think that when we tend to think about how we incorporate education into things, we all want to rush and get the creme de la creme, the most high-tech kind of education. But you also have to realize that no tech is also low tech, and being able to tailor it to your country's situation. I think that learning how to join those dots, particularly when you focus on the experience of learners and teachers. For teachers particularly, who may even view technology as a threat, you have to take them along on the journey. So it's about reskilling and upskilling teachers and ensuring that technology is incorporated both in their training at the teacher training level and also in delivery. And for learners, Nana was right, that there's an element of continuity of learning, right? So how do you create awareness for parents to be able to know that, I should be able to give my child like a phone if that is the only source of a smartphone, it's the only source of technology in the house to be able to access like a learning app, for example. And then lastly, I would propose the idea of a digital learner ID.
Okay.
Students, if you think of your own like journey, you probably switched schools. When I was, going through primary school, I switched school twice, and then you join high school or senior high school. There's more than 1 million kids who are out of school who will need to join a formal education system at some point. But the digital learning records have disappeared through the system. So when you think of like the BCE, you could actually get a child who is in the 8th grade and they don't have basic reading skills and numeracy skills, and that's because nobody has kept up with their learning records. So that progress is not actually like well documented, and people tend to fall through the cracks. So if the education system could prioritize like having something as simple as a learner ID that is able to track the progress of a student through different school systems or different education level systems, I think that would be quite helpful.
Wonderful. As you were giving your answers, a few things jumped out. You're saying that learning has to be learner centric, accessible, inclusive, and all. What do we do, or what measures do we put in place to ensure that these traits are there and they exist as we want to achieve equitable learning skills? FJ, maybe you can share your thoughts.
Yeah, give me the hard one.
I'll get your thoughts just quickly on that one too.
Yeah, well, Montessori is learner-centered, right? So it's all about kid-centered. So maybe we could learn a little bit from the Montessori model.
I see.
And have the public school system learn a little bit from that in giving kids the chance. And also maybe just trusting children, right? Trusting students that if we're going to do learner-centered, have learner-driven education. Give them a period where they are just exploring the technology on their own so they can learn from themselves. Some of the best learnings are done by the kids themselves. We run a robotics competition at TECHAiDE, and it just happened last week at AirTAD. And some of the solutions, we were doing the Sustainable Development Goals, and they were given a robotics set and told, come up with solution sets. And some of the creativity, again, kid-centered, student-centered creativity to solutions. We had an earthquake monitoring that came up. We had a drought indicator, water indicator for farming. It was brilliant. They, when trusting the students, they don't disappoint.
I see. Hilda?
Yeah. Incorporating inclusivity into the design of edtech solutions, right? So, for example, the work that the TECHAiDE does, they provide sort of like the technology platform, but you also need to bring on board content creators who actually are able to, make sure that there is continuous development of localized, high-quality content that is integrated into the system from the word go. And then we also can't shy away from issues of funding, right?
Yeah.
The Ghana government has, spent a significant amount of money in education, but when you look at it statistically, it's actually dropped from 7% as the share of GDP back in 2012 to just a mere like 3.8 or 4% currently. So you have to think of the long game, right? You have to actually invest and put money into developing these systems, investing in the infrastructure and getting it right at this particular level if you want to be able to sustain it. And beyond even sustaining it, it's creating an environment that can be able to attract investment from the TECHAiDEs of this world, from other NGOs or private sector partners, to be able to move it forward.
Great. But let's talk about what the different stakeholders need to do. Right? You run a school, so you interface a lot with entities like the GES, that kind of thing. So what do you think that the major stakeholders need to do? Policymakers, GES, school leadership, teachers, students, all these people.
Okay, so I think that everyone should have in mind who the major stakeholder here is, and that's the learner.
That's the learner.
Okay, so everything that we do is centered around the learner. So if we don't have an idea of who the learner is, then it becomes a challenge, right? Okay, so for the stakeholders, they must focus on the learner. They must create an experience where, regardless of what kind of learner we are dealing with, they are actually gaining something meaningful. Okay, so we have different types of learners. We have learners like me who, until we've manipulated what we are learning, we haven't learned. We have learners who just need to see. We have learners who just need to hear. We have learners who will not do well in the hybrid space because they need to have physical contact with classmates, with teachers to be able to learn. Okay, so for stakeholders, we have to have in mind who the learner is and how to help them.
Then we even have those with maybe special needs.
Exactly. We have learners with special education needs. And with the special education needs, it's a broad range. So what will work for one child will not work for another. So we need to have all these in mind when we are drawing policies, to make it work.
Great. Let's a bit on, for example, parents. Okay, what do you think they can do as we talk about this hybrid learning? All of that. Just from your experience, what you feel? What do you think that parents say? What they can do? Okay,
so parents, apart from provision, because the learner needs the resources to be able to learn. There also has to be the supervision, the monitoring, because sometimes you find that there's that gap. I've given you what you need.
That's it.
And that's it. But are we supervising them, making sure that, because the internet is broad, but are we making sure that they are doing what they need to do at the time that they need to do it? How are we guiding them? How are we molding them, shaping them with what they're supposed to be learning? So for me, I think that's the major role that parents need to play. We provide it, but we also monitor, we supervise to make sure that everything is going on the way it should.
Okay. Can I jump in real quick?
Yeah.
I love that response. Not to promote TECHAiDE, but at TECHAiDE.global, we have a blog. And on the blog, we write to parents, to proprietors, to teachers, and to students, those 4 categories. And we try to help educate, like, what should parents do? It's nice to talk about it, but we have sort of, okay, what do you do with screen time? Some of the topics are like teachers, how to manage the first day of your classroom, proprietors, how to organize teachers and your physical space, and parents, like what to do when your child wants a tablet. Is that okay? How to use it? Yeah.
Great. Can you just talk to us about key partnerships that may be required to ensure that we can successfully implement hybrid learning models? And why do we need these key partnerships?
You definitely need partnerships to be able to do it because everything works within an ecosystem, right? So tech is not the be-all, end-all solution, or a hybrid learning model is not the be-all, end-all solution. It falls within sort of like the parameters of are the policymakers on board? Are they putting in place the right policy and strategies? So the government is a key partner and a key driver for the hybrid learning model itself. In terms of like the enabling infrastructure, if you're able to segregate it from low tech, online, offline models of hybrid learning, you will look at, for example, like telcos. Telcos can be able to support like a low-tech model of education where, service providers are able to use SMSs or USSD codes to be able to still deliver learning content using like a low-tech model. We also have to think of, how we're leveraging sort of like the social media platforms, right? Can you be able to create, the right kind of learning opportunities using like the same, social media that people are using, whether it's TikTok, right? So many kids already know what TikTok is. Can you use it to deliver sort of like to support like learning outcomes in that sense? And lastly, I think a key partnership is with NGOs, for example, because there are lots of kids who live in rural areas or marginalized areas who are out of sort of like these. They live in this and they school in areas that are not connected to either the internet or not. And NGOs can be very instrumental in taking these hybrid learning devices to these communities and connecting them to like the wider education model. And then you also have to think of local partners, right? Content creation is really key. You can develop the technology solution, but if you don't have local partners who can build the content and upload it to your website, what you're doing would be out of alignment with like the local curriculum framework. So you have to bring local partners on board.
Okay. Still listening to EdTech Monday on the February 27, 2023. If you are listening to us on the City Breakfast Show, wonderful. But if not, you can also join in via the City FM Facebook page or via Mest Africa. We are discussing mainstreaming hybrid models of learning. And I have with me Abba Brandful Ankrah, head of preschool at the Vine Christian School. I also have FJ Cava, Chief Operations Officer at TECHAiDE, and I have Hilda Barasa, who's Africa Policy Lead at the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change. All right, now let's listen to some students and their thoughts on their experiences with hybrid learning, what they feel should be improved or how it can be made better, and what's their idea of the future classroom, what they think the future classroom will look like.
So I think it's all about convenience, okay? So after COVID-19, or even during COVID-19, we realized that things like church service, lectures, class, just a click away. And we are still continuing that tradition even after the pandemic because it's convenient for us. Even now that fuel prices are rising, I think it's okay to sit in your room with your kid, or as a university student, sit in your room and then just a click away, which is even sometimes cheaper than, you know, taking a bus to campus and then back again. Then again, some students find their confidence behind the screen. When there is a one-on-one class, they cannot speak. This is highly relative. Some students are very active when they are talking to the teacher face to face, but some are more active behind the screen. They would rather answer questions behind the screen and feel less intimidated, you know, behind the screen. But then everything has its pros and cons. So, of course, it does come with some pros.
With the question of having to blend online learning and physical in class, we think that's the way to go because in the line of work we do, we realize that most schools are not there yet when it comes to tech integration. So we can't do 100% online. However, we can't also sit and say we'll not do anything at all. So there needs to be a balance where we integrate both. So it also helps the children to easily transition into higher education. So as a matter of agency and as a way of making schools and students more resilient to academic disruptions, such as the one that happened during COVID, we really need to look at blending both. And it also helps to save resources, because there are times, I know some universities are doing it, there are times they do online classes, so they don't have to go to campus. Imagine someone traveling a lot of kilometers to get to school. So I think that's the way to go. We need to find a way to blend both online and then in-person learning. Yeah.
In today's age, I believe that online and classic education need to be mixed. We're in the 21st century. It's an essential thing to mix the two forms of education. There's such rich resources online that you cannot teach without making good use of them. So it's basically an extension of learning, and it's a necessity, let me say that. As a parent, I see two things. I see the use of education on one hand, and I also know about the misuse of education on the other hand. So it has to be well supervised, it has to be controlled. You have to make sure that their time is spent well on educational sites and not on social media and even other sites. So it has to be very controlled. There are some parents who may not have access to either the internet or gadgets that will use the internet. So we need to create some kind of equity, and once that is created, I'll be very much in favor for us to have, or my children to have, a mix of both learning online and learning through the traditional ways. I think it's a good thing. It's something that is needed, and we should do it.
With other factors that I can mention, with the challenges I can mention, now phones are expensive, computers are expensive. So combining these two is going to be a little tedious for parents, which I believe wouldn't actually help, because definitely we are going to pay for classes and we are still going to pay for online. So it's going to be a double headache for parents. Secondly, I also believe this is going to make the children kind of isolate themselves from going out. They would rather decide to be indoors and still be doing their own thing, not even listening to what the teachers are saying.
If my classroom lessons were recorded, it will be helpful, because at times you might miss some things that a teacher will say, so you need to refer back and know. If I'm able to practice past questions on my computer and get the results immediately, it'd be so efficient, because I don't need to wait and wait for someone to come mark it or mark it myself. Once I know that it will be marked as soon as I'm done.
Head of preschool at the Vine Christian School, FJ Cava, Chief Operations Officer at TECHaIDE, and Hilda Barasa, Africa Policy Lead at the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard the students and parents sharing very interesting thoughts there. So now that we've heard all of them, let's share a few thoughts on what skills, knowledge, and capacities need to be developed so that hybrid learning is implemented well. Because you heard them, they felt there were a few issues here and there. So what do we need to do? What do we need to improve on so we can better implement this hybrid learning?
Can I jump in there?
Yes.
Yeah. So one thing that TECHaIDE does is when we sell a piece of hardware, we sell the training with it, because we really believe that it's not the hardware, it's the people that make the thing. And part of that we've learned over the years is what we call digital literacy, right? We give all these tools, we send people to the internet, but we don't really train them on how to use it and what's safe and what's not. You know, digital literacy isn't just on how to use it. It's things like phishing scams and spam and all of the negative things that technology can bring. And it's not that we should throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's we should train people on how to use it correctly, right? We give machetes to children on how to cut the grass, right? But machetes are also dangerous tools, but we're not afraid because we've trained them on how to use them correctly.
Great.
And I think if I could add on that, for every other thing, if you think of your math skills, your reading skills, there is a defined model of measuring the level of proficiency that you have. There isn't an equivalent for digital skills. So if you don't build like this model that can actually measure the proficiency of digital skills and know how a child is progressing from, point A to B, for both teachers and learners, it's very hard to measure the effectiveness of a hybrid learning model. So, similar to the parent who said, this could be a waste of time, that, they're going to be paying for their kids to go to school and then pay again for digital skills. It's because you haven't been able to quantify what skills your child is picking up from being able to interact in a hybrid learning model. So this needs to be developed, and when you're able to actually have the kind of data that backs up, my child is now proficient in being able to interact with other learners online, being able to progressively answer difficult questions digitally on the system. Similar to mathletics, right? So the way mathletics works is your child goes online, they start, answering like math questions. The teacher is able to note how long are they spending this particular set of questions or or concept, and they know that this is an area of struggle for the child. So being able to train teachers to be able to understand what the time equivalent that learners are spending in this hybrid model means in terms of their comprehension of subject matter, so they can be able to then support the digital learning with like physical support, being able to tutor them through difficult concept, I think is really key, both for the sustainability of the model, but also for, awareness creation.
Abba.
Okay, so I think Hilda and FJ have basically said everything. I was really hoping somebody will leave something behind. So I'll have something to say, But I think that they've said it. So yes, computer literacy skills are very important. I will focus on the educator or the teacher. So once we train them with the skills that they need, I think it's important that we actually find a way to create networks for them, so that they are able to collaborate, share ideas, support each other, so that the learning is actually spread, I think that will help. And then with the children or the learners, yes, computer literacy skills. And I think that typing skills are also quite important.
Typing skills?
Yes, because we are moving in a world now that, so we're talking about hybrid learning, we are doing a lot of things online, we're doing a lot of things with computers. If we are not able to identify the keys on the keyboard and use them, then it becomes a challenge, because we are answering questions online, we are submitting our assignments online. So typing skills are also very important for the children. Yes, so I think that's another skill too that we can build on.
Great. Hilda, let's talk about educational stakeholders. How can they be supported in producing and using education and skills data to inform policy and support planning and make decisions and all that?
Yeah, I think the hybrid learning system in Ghana, it's fairly nascent. It's sort of like it's
very new.
Very new. And it's only since COVID that sort of like exposed sort of like the weaknesses in the traditional learning system, particularly for continuity, that such conversations have taken center stage. So when I think of how you engage policy stakeholders in the sector, you're engaging them through three things, right? So there's policy, and then process, and then technology, and it has to be factored at. How you engage them has to be factored around these three particular things. So when it comes to policy, the government cannot develop policies in a vacuum. There's a lot of, advocacy that's required, a lot of sense checking of ideas with education practitioners, capacity building, particularly of teachers, as she said. You have to think about how you communicate and the kind of awareness campaigns that you use to actually make people understand what hybrid learning is, what it can deliver, what problems it solves in the community. And then also just bringing on board like tech innovations to be able to scale sort of like the kind of access and impact you need to be able to create a network for all your stakeholders, from both the public, private, and funders on the other hand, and then the tech innovators as well.
Wonderful.
I also think there's to play off what my colleagues have said on the panel, is there's the National Teachers Council and the Ghana Tertiary Educational Commission. There are these there are these institutions that are sometimes overlooked that are have a wealth of information that they're not engaged enough with, right? They know because they're the practitioners on the ground. And as Hilda said and as Ada said, like the teachers, right? Let's pay attention to the teachers. Let's engage the NTC. To see what they have to say. Let's engage the GTEC to see, because they're the ones that actually are interfacing.
Great stuff, guys. Let's wrap it up. Let me take just concluding thoughts. We've been chit-chatting for a while. Very insightful things I've heard. But for somebody who may have just tuned in and it's probably catching this part of the conversation, about what will be your concluding comments on the concept and just the implementation of hybrid learning in Ghana, what we've seen, and how well we can grow it to be so everybody benefits?
Okay, so I'll say that hybrid learning now is the future of learning.
Okay.
Okay, all stakeholders must be involved with the mindset that the primary stakeholder is the learner. So everything we are doing is centered around the learner and helping them to gain the experience that they need to be able to live in the world that we live in today. Yes, so that's what I'll say.
Great. FJ?
Yeah, I agree. Technology is not going away. So we better learn
For
how
those
to
who
use
thought
it.
it was going, no, it's not. It's here.
It's not going away. So we better teach our children how to use it.
Great. Hilda?
Yeah, agree with both of those things. I think, hybrid learning it's the future, right? Like FJ said, technology isn't going away, but I think the approach to how you use technology is what can make or break the system. So you have to consider hybrid, you have to think of hybrid learning and implement it within with that big picture in mind. So you're thinking about a holistic approach to it, thinking about the ecosystem itself, and ensuring that it can succeed just by focusing on the enabling infrastructure, looking at the business models for tech innovators or edtech providers, looking at the human capital element for teachers, and then lastly, not forgetting, make it enjoyable and fun for learners, and make sure that you're bringing
That's important.
you're bringing
very
the
key.
community and
Fun part.
parents along with it.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you so much. I had Abba Brandful Ankrah, head of preschool, Vine Christian School. I had FJ Cava, Chief Operations Officer, TECHaIDE, and I had Hilda Barras, Africa Policy Lead at the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change. And this morning we've been talking mainstreaming hybrid models of learning. So we've heard it. That really is our reality. Technology won't go away. We need to embrace it, but we need to build ourselves and develop the infrastructure and capacity to do it and do it well. So the learner benefits. The learner is the most important element in this equation. The learner has to benefit. Let me thank my guests once again, Abba, FJ, and Hilda. Thank you so much for coming in. It was fun. It was great. And I'm better educated than when we started.
Thanks for having us.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. So that was our serving of EdTech Monday for February. Now, EdTech Monday is a platform for EdTech entrepreneurs, education stakeholders, and government representatives to facilitate critical conversations on the use of technology for teaching and learning. The show is an initiative of the MasterCard Foundation's Regional Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning in ICT, and it's part of the foundation's strategy to find solutions to Africa's youth employment by closing gaps in access to quality education and advancing the integration of technology in education policies and practices across Africa. EdTech Monday builds on the foundation's Young Africa Work strategy in Ghana with the vision of harnessing opportunities to shape the future of work and to create an inclusive economy with enhanced resilience for young people, especially women, by 2030. The MasterCard Foundation has partnered with Mest Africa to bring you EdTech Monday, airing on the last Monday of every month. Catch the show live at 9 a.m. On the City Breakfast Show, or watch it on Facebook Live via City 97.3 FM or Mest Africa. My name is Nathan Quao and I moderated the session. Join us in March for another insightful session on EdTech, education and technology.